All right, everybody, welcome to BO Boys for Sunday, May 31st. F it, it's a raw feed. We're doing it live in studio. I'm Clayton.
Yeah, Pat. Clayton, this is, let's just say it, one of the most historic box office weekends in the history of the BO Boys, in the history of recorded history. I mean, this is going to go down as something we'll remember on our deathbeds. And we could not do this weekend, this historic weekend, just the two of us. We had to bring in, there's only one person that we could possibly bring in. You know who it's going to be. It's the legend. It's the icon. It is the box office daddy himself. The reason we are all here, it's one man, Scott Mendelson. Scott, thank you for joining us on this historic episode of the BO Boys.
Oh, you're very welcome. It's a pleasure to be here. And, last time we spoke, we had just gotten out of the Disney presentation where I think I was successfully gaslit into thinking The Mandalorian would actually work, at least on the level they wanted it to, because those first 15 minutes were so damn good.
They were so, it wasn't our fault, right, Scott? I mean, we had podcast Jesus Kirk Minahan on last week, and he was giving me the business about hyping up this Mandalorian and Grogu because of CinemaCon, which I did go to. Scott did go to. Clayton did not go. But it wasn't our fault, right? We couldn't have seen this coming based on the 15 minutes of Mandalorian and Grogu that we got to see at CinemaCon, which we both went to.
Just based on that, sure. But, and again, it's not going to it's not a John Carter size wipeout. I mean, it's basically going to do Solo numbers, maybe a little less, but with far less of a budget than Solo. So, I mean, right now, and forgive me for skipping ahead, it dropped 69% in weekend 2, which is a record for a post-Memorial Day weekend biggie. It dropped worse than like the 65 to 67-ish percent of X-Men this, X-Men that, Solo, et cetera, et cetera. It's at 137 right now. If it continues like that, it's probably going to end up with around 185 domestic. And right now it's at 56 domestic, 45 or 44 overseas percentage. Excuse me.
Yeah.
So if that continues, then it's about 330 worldwide on a 165 budget. However, it's not dropping quite as hard overseas as it is in North America. And while they're both doing very well of their own accord, Obsession and Backrooms aren't going to be, overseas juggernauts to the extent that they're domestic juggernauts, relatively speaking. So unless it just really gets its ass kicked by, a pretty stacked and plentiful June, thank goodness, it could do 350, 355. It's not, it's in the realm of possibility. And is that bad? Sorry, go ahead. Shut up.
Well, I was going to say, we got to get into this Mandalorian, this Grogu, this historic number one. So, I mean, Clayton, I can't imagine you would be offended by me asking, Scott Mendelson, can you give us a historic guest plow for this weekend? Can you give us the top 5 of this weekend? Normally, of course, Clayton does this at the top of the show and the results, the top 5. But I think the historical record needs to show Scott Mendelson giving us the top 5 for this weekend of Friday, May 29th.
I appreciate it. B, that's always the least favorite part of my own box office podcast. But I'll do it for you because you're a friend. Backrooms was number 1 for the weekend with $81.5 million. It has made 118 worldwide on approximately $10 million budget. It is A24's biggest opening weekend by a lot. It's currently their the studio's second biggest domestic grosser, right between Everything Everywhere All at Once and Marty Supreme, which ended its run with around 96 million. So give it a few days. Globally, I think it's still behind Everything Everywhere All at Once, which did about 145 worldwide, and Marty Supreme, which did. Every time I look that up, Marty Supreme, it's always like a really weird number that I don't trust because maybe I'm just.
It's hard
about
to trust
150.
Timmy
That's fine.
Days.
That's fine. I think like Box Office Mojo had like 270 at some point. Well, that's insane. Somebody would have told me about that. But no, it's at 150. Everything Everywhere is at 145-ish. So this will be A24's biggest everything in a week. Wow. And okay, inflation, give it 2 weeks. This is the second biggest opening for any new to cinema horror franchise title, because technically it is based on a thing. I don't know how you classify a YouTube series of YouTube shorts based on 4chan visual posts, et cetera, but it's not original in that sense. It's not Sinners. It's not Obsession. That being said, this is the second biggest new to cinema horror breakouts after It Chapter 1, which opened with 123 million in 2017. And obviously that one had a lot more pop culture legacy behind it, yada, yada, yada. Yeah, I mean, this is weirdly enough, because it's happening right alongside Obsession and Star Wars, it's almost, I don't want to say underrated, but in any other weekend, if this were the only news, we'd be, I mean, this is fucking nuts.
It's nuts. It's nuts.
Yeah.
I mean, then of course, number two is what makes this weekend also so incredible. I mean, Clayton, do you want to just say what is number two?
Obsession. Pardon me. I'm sorry. I'm just so excited. I think I'm going into a second puberty now because I'm so excited. Obsession's number 2 made 26.4 plus 10%.
Wow.
And it's at 104.7 in 17 days of release. The other thing that is amazing about this that I don't think we've talked about, the theater count for this is 2,781, which is lower than every other movie right now, other than, like, I mean, it's so much lower than these other big openers. It's been doing this business and going up. This hasn't happened. And Scott, I'm going to give you the floor because this hasn't happened since the 80s.
I mean, the title that we keep hearing thrown around, what Obsession's doing, increasing in its third weekend non-Christmas wide release, E.T.
E.T.
I mean, Scott, could you put that into perspective? That Obsession is the new E.T. I could say that, and it's not crazy. It's wild, but not crazy.
Which means the only thing that can stop it might be whatever the fuck the 2026 equivalent of the best little whorehouse in Texas might be. So, Minions and Monsters? I don't know.
I think there's a reference to that movie in Minions and Monsters because it's about a whole Hollywood.
And that is the article for you to write on your Substack, The Outside Scoop, which everyone is obligated to pay for. We owe this man a living.
Yes.
And that's the article that Minions and Monsters is the new best little whorehouse in Texas because it's the movie that stops Obsession, which is, of course, our generation's E.T. And none of that is crazy. None of that could get any of us locked up. Those are all words that make sense strung together in that order.
I think those words in that order might get some phone calls from Universal and Illumination, and I wouldn't blame them.
Okay.
That being said, yes, it is the first non-Christmassy release, wide release, blah, 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 not super expanding, blah, 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 to go up in its second and third weekend since E.T., which did this in June of 1982. However, for what it's worth, I was only able to find 4 other circumstances, including E.T., of this happening, and that's even counting the Christmas, the mid to late December stuff. You've got Tootsie in 1982. You've got Scream in 1996. You have Everything Everywhere. I'm sorry. You have Anyone But You in 2023. And that's it. And then you have now Obsession. And there's 100 different caveats even for that. One of which is that, E.T. and Tootsie were dealing with like under 1,100 screens, 900,000 screens, whatever. And they were adding a couple hundred here and there, as was Scream. Scream opened on, I believe, around 1,400 screens, and by weekend 3 was up to 1,700. The other thing is that I keep saying that, Everyone But You and Scream were both seen as, frankly, bombs after their opening weekends because they only opened with around $6 million. Now, ironically, $6 million for inflation from 1996 would be about 16 million, which is what Obsession opened to. Different conversation. But this is like, in terms of a film that opens even remotely what we consider to be wide release today. So let's say 2,000 screens, 2,500 screens, whatever. Didn't bomb an opening weekend. Didn't particularly exaggerate, didn't get that many more screens. I mean, I think it's jumped up by like less than 100 from its opening weekend. Mea culpa if I'm off on that. It's just a movie that has been just consistently pulling in crowds outside of the holiday season, even without school being out for most I don't know. My oldest is off of college. Well, technically, my second oldest is too because he's doing a hybrid program. Point being, elementary school students are stuck till mid June.
Mm-hmm,
So they will have to wait until mid June to buy tickets to the Sheep Detective and sneak into Obsession.
You know,
Which, by the way, any children listening to this, they're like, "Golly gee, I want to see Backrooms and Obsession and whatever." It's like I got to sneak into a movie. Great. Do it with Sheep Detective.
Yes.
Star Wars does not need your money.
and
You
Sheep
heard this. You
Detectives-
heard this from the man himself. This is what we need.
Yeah. And Sheep Detectives, which has been holding like a mofo, which would have been such a bigger story if it wasn't for Backrooms and Obsession and Star Wars flailing. We'd all be talking Sheep Detectives with these holds. It's up to 54 million. It'll get itself
Yes.
over 60.
Oh,
That should
it's-
be part of the marketing campaign starting tomorrow from Amazon MGM is you want to see Backrooms, you want to see Obsession, but you're under 18, and then just put the Sheep Detective logo up. Why not? It's in enough theaters. It's probably the best bet to go as far as Sheep Detectives will be playing next to Obsession. Just be overt with it.
That would be fine, except Amazon's got Masters of the Universe coming out on Thursday.
Oh,
And
boy.
A, that's a bigger picture. And B, it's a little bit more plausible that some for example, a 14-year-old would buy a ticket to the PG-13 He-Man movie. And, maybe they actually are seeing the PG-13 He-Man movie, as opposed to, this, 14-year-old that says, I would like one ticket for the Sheep Detective, please.
Yeah.
And they sneak into, an R-rated movie.
Could
Anyway.
this help Masters of the Universe on Thursday? I mean,
Can't hurt.
It can't hurt, right? I mean, this could be the thing that saves it, as if it adds $5 million of people who have no intention of seeing it, but then want to go see Backrooms.
Well, we saw something similar with the Wild Robot when it was
Yes.
doing what it was doing during the Terrifier 3 run.
God,
Yeah.
I was proud to be an American that day.
Right? There's definitely kids who went and said, one for the Wild Robot, and then they snuck in and they saw Art the Clown doing his business. I mean, it would be the best. I mean, Sheep Detective, He-Man, both of these movies, MGM, we need MGM, right?
Yeah.
So the fact that kids can buy those tickets for either one of those movies and then go and see Backrooms or Obsession, it's great for theaters.
I mean, obviously we'd be talking like at best hundreds of dollars, but whatever. But Scary Movie 6 is also an R-rated movie that will theoretically appeal to younger audiences.
Mhm.
I saw the first one when I was 20. It was in a packed opening night crowd, and I was not the oldest person there, or I was not the youngest person there by any stretch of the imagination. And this was back when the idea of making an R-rated film that was somewhat teen and or young adult appealing wasn't weird.
Yes.
And obviously a lot has changed since then, yada, yada, yada. But, and then there's the Last Digital Circuits, which you can't do with that because they're already fucking sold out. So good luck.
I mean, that is the one I have gotten word from so many of our listeners, our wannabe-o boys, wannabe-o girls, wannabe-o people who say the only reason they are aware of this amazing digital circus and how much money it's going to make is because of you, Scott. You have been on this story. This is your Watergate. You have been on this story for months now. This is one of the ones you'll be remembered for. Is no one's been talking about this movie except for you. And when it opens, so what is your final prediction of what it makes next weekend? Are we
jokes
talking
aside,
15 million plus?
That would be the aspirational best case scenario. I mean, jokes aside, this is an opening like Backrooms. And mea culpa for putting Digital Circus as my dark horse pick in the Out Now with Aaron and Abe summer movie gamble instead of, obviously, I should have bet on Backrooms. Whoops. But yeah, I mean, I can't imagine it getting much in the way of walk-up general interest business because it's literally episode 8 and episode 9 of a YouTube animated series. It would be like people, going to see the Stranger Things series finale in theaters without having seen Stranger Things the rest of the series. So, but yeah, and that being said, I bought tickets probably 3 weeks ago for me and my 3 kids. And even though I bought them 3 weeks ago for it was the Thursday because, previews, I did not get the theater or the seats that I prefer.
Wow. You, the person who's been writing about this movie for months.
They didn't tape off 3 seats where you wanted for VP.
I'm sure they would have if I had asked.
Okay.
Yeah.
But
Good.
for a number, jokes aside, I try not to do that in positions where I don't know if I'm going to have time to write about something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, I am probably going to make time to write about this, yada, yada, yada. But, because, if I end up like going to a film festival, but then, I don't have anything interesting to say about it. Well, if I paid for my own ticket, nobody's the wiser.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, that's such. Look at the morals on this guy. I mean, how do you not give this guy a living? How do you not owe this guy a living? Look at it. He's not taking stuff. He's not pulling the Mendelson card, say, box office daddy's here, get out of the way, give me your popcorn, give me your hot dog, take your baby outside, or I'll take it outside for you. This is not what you do.
Did that last Tuesday?
Okay.
Not really. Because I went to see Backrooms, which I very much liked, and the screening was out at like 6:00 in the afternoon in Santa Monica. Shocker, traffic was hell on earth. So I drove over to Century City just to grab a bite to eat. And lo and behold, they were having like a influencer fan screening for Masters of the Universe. So I politely said, hey, if there's room, I promise not to be a dick about it, but I'm here anecdotally, can I sneak in? They made a couple of phone calls. I said, hey, I'm going to go grab dinner. You can give me a thumbs up or some thumbs down when I get back. And I went in and saw it. And this isn't, it's under embargo until Tuesday, but if time allows, I might see it again tomorrow night.
Wow. Okay.
And see, Scott, I think you gave those people a thrill more. I think you don't realize is that you gave them a thrill that they got to do something good for you for once.
Yeah.
I think that's the difference is that they're like, finally, we can do something for Scott Mendelson since he's done so much for us.
And he did it so politely. He's saying, if there's room, if you got a chance. So all he really had to do was look and snap. Mm-hmm. That's it. Mendelson could have just said, you, out of the way. And he didn't do that. And that's why we love him. So just to finish this top 5, Michael was number 4. And its 3-day made 11.7, down 43%. It's now up to 339 million domestic. Ed, we'll talk about this later. The breadwinner, Nate Bargatze's debut, 3-day opening of $7.5 million. So that's at top 5. So all right, we're going to go into all these, but let's get into the big story. Number 1, Backrooms, like you said, Scott, opening to 81.4 million. And the thing about this movie is people kind of saw not this coming, but there was talk, this is going to open really well. Mm-hmm. But that really well a few weeks ago was, I think this is going to get to 15 or 20 million.
Yeah.
And then you get to a week or two ago when it's like 30, 40. I mean, on this show last Sunday, I made the bold, in quotes, prediction that Backrooms is going to open up number 1 ahead of Star Wars. And that was a week ago Sunday.
Well, I went higher than you. I went 67 on this.
Well, that was Wednesday. I'm talking last Sunday when we were doing the results with Podcast Jesus Kirk Minahan. And I said, you know what? Backrooms is going to open ahead of Star Wars. The both of you were like, yeah, I think I could see that.
Yeah.
That's only a week ago. Now this movie is opening to 80 million. Scott, how did this keep soaring so much in these last few weeks? Because people saw it being a hit, but again, people saw it being a hit of, this is going to open 15 or 20 million.
Yeah, and this was another one that I think more Lisa Lehman on my pod kept going, pay attention to this one, pay attention to this one. I, like an idiot, listened to my children in Pump Digital Circus, so I will never listen to my children ever again.
Never.
They're aware of Backrooms, but they're currently indifferent. But yeah, the initial tracking was like 20 million, and again, tracking is not supposed to be a crystal ball. Mm-hmm. Ideally, tracking is, and all the research related to it, is pre-release information, research, data, whatever, that allows studios to say, here's what we're doing right and here's what we're doing wrong in terms of marketing and promotion and raising awareness and creating interest. So theoretically, if a movie comes on the boards, as they say, with $20 million, and it opens with a lot more than 20 million, it doesn't necessarily mean the tracking is wrong. It just means the studio took the information and ran with it and made the right choices.
Mm-hmm.
or they just realize we're screwed and cut their losses, blah blah blah.
Right.
That being said, I mean, I'm not going to say I was terribly prophesizing, but I knew it was going to be huge when I saw it, and I saw it. Oh yeah, I saw it last Tuesday. Wait, was it a week? Yeah, it was a Tuesday afternoon. At 4:00. And okay, that wasn't exactly right at the, that was more or less at the last minute. But as someone that Five Nights at Freddy's, not a good movie, but I'm happy it's doing well with the kids. Or Minecraft movie, not great, especially after the first act, but I'm glad it's doing well with the kids. Even the Super Mario Brothers cartoons, these are not aspirational animated features. They look great, but I'm glad they're doing well with kids. This was one where I walked out of it thinking, there are no apologies for this.
Mm-hmm.
It's great on its own terms. And I intentionally read as little as humanly possible about the source material, watched none of the videos, just so, how does this work for someone that's not going to recognize the lore or the Easter eggs or the callbacks? I don't even know if to the extent this film has Easter eggs and lore. I'm guessing it does, and callbacks, but it worked for me as a very good, stupidly well-made, superbly acted, Chiwetel Ejiofor has always been one of our best. He, brought his A game and, single-handedly elevates the large portions of the movie where it's just him on screen acting. And so it's like, this works. This works whether you give a damn about the IP or not.
Yes.
And that, of course, is, the Jumanji secret to make it simplistic.
The Five Nights at Freddy comparison is such a good one because that is such a movie, huge opening, but it is only for the fans. There was no way that could spread much further than what it did because, listen, everything's subjective, but the movie's bad, and it's kind of impenetrable to someone who is not really a fan of that. Backrooms, a movie that I think, especially because of the box office story it's going to be, is kind of a wild dark horse Oscar contender next year in terms of, I think there's some acting, like you said, Chiwetel Ejiofor. I think he's going to get buzz, and I think production design, sort of that kind of stuff under it. This has to be nominated, or at least would be a snub if it doesn't. And I think that's part of why the ceiling. We have no idea how high the ceiling on this is going forward because it is just a good movie that anyone could be super into. It has nothing to do with if you ever even heard of the YouTube videos.
And I think there's so much hand-wringing from the old farts about how, what is this, and a YouTube thing, blah, blah. It's like,
who really directed this?
Yeah, let's not even give credence to that. We wrote an article on Substack as to who actually wrote this, directed this. We debunked a lot of things.
Debunked everything.
Yeah, we debunked everything. But so here's the thing about this: is that old farts are so used to getting movies made from shit that they know everything about, to the point where they get annoyed if it's not exactly what they want. You can now free yourself. Free yourself, you old fart. Go to a movie where you don't know the source material, where you don't know what the Easter eggs you're supposed to be looking for are, and enjoy a good movie done by somebody who has talent that's a new, fresh voice. This is an opportunity. This is not an attack on you. This is not something that is bad. This is something that is great. You can free yourself from the shackles of, oh man, we're going to do another Masters of the Universe movie. It's going to bomb. Another Tron movie. They're doing, Lionsgate's doing a prequel for Rambo with Noah Centineo.
Yeah.
And that looks like the dumbest thing you could possibly do right now after this weekend. A weekend ago, maybe that seemed like it could do something. Now it's like, what are you doing?
What are you doing? What do you do? We can't do any more movies that are, this is a tribute to Egon. That's over. This is no more of, this is going to make me feel like when I was a kid in the 80s. No, we should be making things that makes you feel like a kid in 2023.
Yeah, open your mind to wonder again.
So Scott, the young people aspect of this, I mean, we're seeing these numbers that it was something like 80% of the people went to see Backrooms were under 35, I think it was. I'm sure if you go lower than that, it's
I
like
actually.
God knows how many people are 25 and under went to go see it. This
Okay,
is
it played 86% under the age of 35,
wow.
Yeah.
67% under 25,
Wow.
and 44% under 21.
Wow.
I asked for, but have yet to receive, and they may not have this data. Is there a number for like the 18 to 20s, and is there a number for the under 18s that theoretically went with a parent or guardian?
Wow. That is incredible. And again, especially since there are probably so many kids sneaking into this who didn't want to be counted in that. So God knows how off those numbers are. But this is, and it's why this weekend is, we'll talk about it later, where it ranks in the most important historical box office weekends of all time. But it's such a big weekend because this is a sea change. This is you gotta make things, and it's obviously, we've all known this, the three of us have been saying this for years, but it is clear as day. The old stuff is out. No more Ghostbusters.
No.
It's over.
No.
It's over. Obviously, there's Spider-Man and characters that are going to endure forever, Batman, but it's over. Egon is dead in every way that is possible. R.I.P., but not R.I. in movie theaters anymore. It is, young people have taken over. So, Scott, do you think that message is going to actually get through after this weekend? Do you think there finally will be we have to, will Hollywood take the lessons that they should from Backrooms opening to 80 and Obsession being the new E.T. as far as week to week holds?
I mean, obviously, I hope so. And optimistically, I might even argue that this is sort of the lesson of Five Nights at Freddy's, and it just took a couple years because movies aren't made in a day.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I was pessimistic because you'd think stuff would have been announced immediately in the Five Nights at Freddy vein. And yes, Hollywood will chase the trends personified by these pictures, and they will learn the wrong lessons, and they will release movies kind of sort of similar that aren't nearly as good, not nearly as successful.
Mm-hmm.
However, let them. There are far worse things that Hollywood can do other than spending a few years adapting video games that are so new that I've never played them,
Mm-hmm.
books so new that I've never read them, social media stuff that I've barely even heard of, giving new, young, promising filmmakers, ideally not just white guys, but that's a different conversation.
Mm-hmm.
YouTube is not exactly the most egalitarian. Is that the term? Yeah. Anyway.
Yeah. Adapt some Pinterest posts as well. Yeah.
Yes, mood boards. Mood board the movie.
Yeah.
And so, it's there are worse things, and finally letting the next generation get their turns at bat, relatively speaking. And, a lot of talk this weekend about, game changing and disruption and all that. This was not disruption. This was not disruption in any way, shape, or form. This is the people of the audiences and artists of today rebutting the last decade's worth of disruption nonsense that has completely dominated the media and or entertainment ecosystem. This is the people of that age group, over under, basically saying, you've been telling us for a decade that movie theaters don't matter. You're wrong. You've spent a decade telling us that the only IP that matters is crap that you grew up on. You're wrong. You've spent a decade telling people that, today's kids are too stuck on their phones or on their social media or whatever to show up in theaters. You're wrong. So what this is basically saying, you idiots, you had a system that worked in 2014, 2015. It still would have worked if you had gotten out of your own way. And now, here you go. Do with it what you will.
Man. And amen.
God.
Hey, preach. This is, Scott, this is exactly everything that we've been thinking, everything we've been saying. Like, people want to go to theaters. Young people want a place where they can go and see the things that they love on the biggest screen possible with their friends. They just haven't had the opportunity to do it because the stuff hasn't been there. The product hasn't been there. You see Curry Barker, who is so excited to have a movie in theaters, who is talking about how theatrical is so important,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they are not saying, "Oh, let's go on a streamer, let's take this to Netflix, No, they know where their product is going to matter. YouTube is their TV, and they've moved on, and they've moved up. That is the pipeline that should happen. And if they try to divert it, it's going to be terrible, because these guys and hopefully gals and people can start making stuff on YouTube, create a group of people who are slavishly devoted to them, and then go straight to the big screen and make Bafa Bobo.
Yeah.
You are right. Going back to something you mentioned, it's and again, we've seen this for the last several years too. This isn't a new concept. I mean, everybody from Markiplier to the anime ecosystem to Taylor Swift has been saying loud and clear, theatrical movie going, a wide, nationwide, global theatrical release is the pinnacle of monoculture, pop culture achievement.
Yes.
It's still what, we're on YouTube because the gatekeepers won't let us in the normal way.
Yes.
But once they say, hey, come play in the movie theaters, hell yeah. Because that to them is still, that is still to them an aspirational milestone. It's an aspirational activity for people that just want to see stuff they like with their friends. And if anything, again, this is a generation, more or less, that never grew up in a time when cell phones and social media were new, surprising, or treats.
Mm-hmm.
They were cultural or economic necessities.
Yeah.
So for them, you can't go to the theaters because you'd have to turn your phone off for 3 hours. Don't promise me, don't threaten me with a good time.
Yes.
And this is also the generation that has never grown up in a time before a movie like Red Notice or Hocus Pocus 2 or Soul or whatever that normally would have been in theaters, but now you can watch it on the comfort of your home, from the comfort of your home on day one for free. That has now been par for the course for almost a decade. Mm-hmm. And for that generation, without even getting to the, how do I put this, quality curve for most straight to streaming movies, exceptions notwithstanding, the idea of going to a theater to see a movie is different and even more unique and even more special when, compared to demographics like us, where that was just one of the 2 or 3 only games in town.
Right.
And
our generation convinced ourselves, well, that's over. We're sick of that. We can't leave. The kids want to leave. They want to get out of the house. They want to get away from their phones. They want to see the thing on the biggest screen possible, because if everything is screens, the movie theaters still have the biggest screens. And so if you are kids this weekend, wow, Backrooms, I used to watch it on my laptop, and now I could see it on the biggest screen that is possible. Although it is amazing Backrooms did this weekend with no IMAXs. I mean, this Grogu at number 3 is gobbling up.
Is that amazing?
I mean, it would have been if it had IMAXs this weekend and the same number of tickets sold. We're at over $100 million opening weekend for Backrooms.
Yeah, and I just think it's another sign that yes, IMAX and PLF Dolby, yada yada yada, are very important in terms of making the pitch and convincing demographics that this thing is worth seeing on a giant screen. However, Devil Wears Prada 2, The Hunger Games Mockingjay Part 1, Jurassic World Rebirth, and Obsession, and now Backrooms. And you don't need IMAX. That's not it's great to have it. Mm-hmm. And I certainly relish the opportunity to watch movies that I otherwise would have seen on an IMAX or Dolby screen, but audiences don't need it. And the movies they want to see don't drop dead once they no longer have PLF auditoriums.
Right. Look at Project Hail Mary. It obviously the IMAX added to that opening weekend or two, but it lost IMAXs and didn't miss a beat weekend 3, 4, 5.
And, it is, I think, that's why I was so angry in 2023 when Paramount tried to sell the narrative that the only reason Mission Impossible 7 underwhelmed is because it lost all the PLFs after a week and a half. Mm-hmm. It's like, no, that's not true. And sure enough, 2 years later, Final Conflict keeps them for a little bit longer, maybe like 3 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
But it's not like it drops dead after losing its PLF screens. It's actually kind of leggy for a Memorial Day opener.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And which is weird because I would argue part 8 is worse than part 7, but whatever. But yeah, and I can't think of any recent you must see this in IMAX or else movie that actually suffered when it lost IMAX and or Dolby screens.
Is there
not Avatar 2, not Avatar 3, not Sinners, not Dune 2, not Project Hail Mary, etc., etc., etc.
Is there any possibility? I mean, Master Universe is going to probably bomb or way underdo what these theaters would have thought it would have done a year or two ago. Any possibility that in the next few weeks, Backrooms gets some IMAXs, some Dolbys, where these theaters are saying, we are bleeding with these half-empty Masters of the Universe screenings. Let's get Backrooms in there. And then in weekend 3, 2, 3, 4, that is a huge sort of like, hey, and now see it again in IMAX and Backrooms. Like, I know these deals are signed years in advance, but God, you got to clear out some of these screens for Backrooms in the next few weeks.
I mean,
or Obsession. Imagine getting Obsession in IMAX. Just seeing her just do what she does when she's standing there, and I won't spoil it. But don't you want to see her stand there and do what she does in IMAX?
She grabs her guitar and sings him a happy song.
Yes,
there we go.
Of course.
Obviously, if Master Universe bombs so badly, and I don't think it's going to bomb that badly, I'm not going to say it's going to be a hit. There's a difference. It's not going to do
14 million. Opening.
Yeah. Yes, there could be a situation where it does so poorly over the weekend that, like, okay, fine, fuck this. From Monday to Thursday, you can have the IMAX screens. Because, of course, June 12th, you have Steven Spielberg's Disclosure Day.
Yes.
And after that, you've got Toy Story 5. And after that, you've got Supergirl. After that, you've got Minions. And I think even Angel Studios Washington is getting some PLFs. Don't quote me on that, but I think that's the case.
Hope so.
And so forth and so forth and so forth. So there's not a lot of room. Now, what I can absolutely see happening, and I'm making this up as I go along, so bear with me, is sometime like in maybe August or September, not looking at the calendar offhand, where there's just like a slower period where just for fun, A24 and or Focus Features could heck, if they could work together and do a double feature out of that, that would be fun.
Wow. That would be incredible. Yes. These two movies are going to be linked together forever. And Kane Parsons and
Curry
Barker, they're going to be linked together forever. It is kind of the closest we've had to Barbenheimer since Barbenheimer. There wasn't a cute name for it.
We had Saw Patrol, but you let us down.
We did have Saw. You're right. That other than Saw Patrol, this is where it does feel like these movies are linked. They're feeding on each other. Again, it's not like there were memes where they were having her. Although I'm sure this week we're going to see some memes of the Obsession girl standing there doing what she does in the back rooms. But there is something about these two movies coming out at the same time.
Well, someone tweeted, I think, or there was a tweet that I saw on Reddit that said, "This is Barbenheimer for sickos."
Okay.
And I thought that was a funny little tweet.
I think it's Barbenheimer for the people who love Barbenheimer. The horror aspect, Scott.
Yeah.
We've
they said sickos in a good way. They were not being.
No.
Yeah.
But I think part of why these movies are doing so well is they are really accessible, even though they are horror. But Scott, do you think this is a horror specific phenomenon when it comes to these new young filmmakers taking over the theaters? Obviously, horror is the easiest thing to make cheaply and still have it play way bigger. But is it only horror, or can we see this expanding beyond horror movies?
Well, obviously, we won't know until they try. And, it's not a hot take as to why horror is the entry-level genre in this circuit. It always has been.
Mm-hmm.
And, some of them get stuck there, some of them don't. Wes Craven, for example, made no secret about the fact that he would have liked to have also made a few more One from the Arts, but whatever.
Yeah.
Or whatever that
Music of the
Music
Heart.
of My Heart.
Thank
yeah,
you.
Music of My
Yes.
Heart.
Thank you.
That he always says that was the movie he wishes he had made that 10 times.
Yeah. And again, that's not to disparage his better horror pictures, but variety is awesome. That being said, I'm of two minds about this. First of all, yes, horror is a gateway genre, always has been. Horror is now theatrically safe in a way that most other genres aren't for a variety of reasons. Budget, you don't need movie stars. People will still show up for new or new to you concepts. And the fact that horror is successful means that horror is successful because you have people that go to the theaters to see a scary movie and they see the trailer for the next 3 or 4 scary movies.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I mean, and even this isn't a hot take, but I will say that Backrooms opened bigger than it would have because its trailer was playing in front of Obsession for the last 2 weeks.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that was a do or die, but it certainly helped.
100%. Yeah.
Now, does that mean that, if these same under the radar talents start making rom-coms and, thrillers or whatever? I don't know. Here's the other thing, and this is sort of me navel gazing, but there's a case to be made that horror cinema as we know it is really maybe the only mainstream genre that is terribly relevant to today's young moviegoers.
Mm-hmm.
Because simplistically speaking, I mean, how the fuck do you make a movie about, a corporate thriller about evil doing being exposed, stopped, and punished, and sell that to today's young moviegoers,
Right.
or have it made by today's young moviegoers? I mean, even a rom-com, offline dating. Again, I'm out of touch, but do people still do that?
Right.
Does that work now?
Right. I mean, Clayton, you're on the apps.
Yeah, I'm even on the apps.
He's
I'm
on
an old
the apps.
fart and I'm on the apps.
And,
Everyone's on the apps. You have
so
to be on
much
the
of
apps.
like
Let's
what
all
we
get on the
consider
apps.
just the movie, especially one that takes place in the present day, yada yada yada, depends on an amount of cause and effect and economic stability that this generation has never experienced.
Yes.
And to the extent that a lot of these movies, both the two that are out right now and others before and after, are about growing up in this hellhole with no economic potential and constantly being blamed for being losers by the very generation that fucked you over 800 times.
Yeah.
And that's
Yeah.
what Weapons is about, basically. It's about, today's adults being so willfully and unintentionally irresponsible and indifferent to the needs of those below them that today's kids are forced to fend for themselves.
Yeah. And there's old people just sucking their life from them. So,
Yeah.
And the other thing about these horror movies, when you look at Obsession especially, and the Zach Kreger stuff, Weapons and Barbarian, they also have they are comedies. And they filled the role that a Seth Rogen movie used to fill, or a Jim Carrey movie used to feel. Like, Obsession is very funny. Barbarian is one of the funniest movies of the last 10 years. So comedy is dead. I mean, we'll talk about it again with Breadwinner in a little bit. Comedy at the box office is pretty dead, other than for the decade that kind of fueled superhero movies. And now horror has always been funny, but this is where the teens are getting their comedies. They're going to Obsession, and that's the closest they're going to get to a big screen comedy movie until that does come back in its own way. But
And I think that's a good point, because you talked about what are the other things that could be made. And yeah, horror, again, for all the reasons that both of you mentioned, that's why horror gets made. I do have a hope, and I do believe that there are people doing comedy online that can now translate it into the big screen. And I know we've had this conversation, Pat, and you're like, who's the next Jim Carrey? Next Jim Carrey. It's not going to look like Jim Carrey. It's not going to look like what we know.
He won't be Canadian with a rubber face.
Well, it's going to be something that kids resonate with. And that's the thing, is that we don't even know what it's going to be.
Mm-hmm.
And it's going to come back. And we're going to be excited about it. Will we understand it? I think probably we'll be able to wrap our head around it. But that is my hope, is that because comedy can be as cathartic as horror. It can, right? When it's done the best. And I think in the next 5 to 10 years, we may see that happen.
The one thing is that you are correct in terms of superheroes and comedy. I will argue it's even broader than that, that in the last, in the 2010s and onward, basically every franchise and every genre other than like hard horror started using comedy as an added value element. So you had generations of moviegoers that if they wanted a cinematic laugh, they could get it in, Scream 6, Minions, Deadpool, Hobbs and Shaw, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So it wasn't just comic book movies. I think
Jumanji.
Seth Rogen talked about that too. But I would argue it was basically every franchise wannabe title that used comedy as a way to assure non-fans that it was safe to swim in the pool.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And even films like Dungeons and Dragons that would bomb, they would still earn more money in global revenue and thus be seen by more people at a theatrical level than all but the very most successful comedies.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And that's such a great point, not to interrupt, but that was directed and written by the same people who did Game Night.
Yes.
So they and the National Lampoon Vacation reboot or requel or whatever you want to call it. So they pivoted to this sort of like, fantasy thing, and we could still put comedy in it.
Just makes me want to think, and I know you can't really say much about Masters of the Universe, but there has been a lot of talk leading up to this as, is it more of a comedy than they're letting on? And I've been out here, especially the last month, pretty strongly saying they should have had a stronger take of do the Brady Bunch movie version of Masters of the Universe, or the Barbie version of Masters of the Universe. Obviously, that's the highest level.
Barbie's a better,
but it's sort of like meta. We can't play this straight. We've got to really. Again, you probably can't say whether it's really going that way, but it definitely isn't been promoted that way at all.
Well, to be fair, Barbie wasn't quite promoted as that per se.
But definitely
although
promoted
ironically,
as a
loading
comedy.
into it, we kind of thought it was, is this just going to be a Brady Bunch movie? It turned out to be a little bit deeper than that.
Right.
Although obviously the Brady Bunch movie is fine. Masters of the Universe, it's certainly not meta in the sense that, it doesn't take place in a world where He-Man action figures exist, blah, blah, blah.
Mm-hmm.
But a friend of mine, Darren Mooney, basically wrote a tweet comparing it to I See the TV Glow.
Okay.
And
wow.
he's not wrong. It's certainly
Okay, I'm
is
intrigued
very
now.
aware of He-Man as a toy property in terms of crafting 80s masculinity, not
Okay.
unlike how Barbie reckoned with Barbie's pop culture influence on femininity.
Okay.
It's not quite as explicit. It's certainly not quite as quote unquote emotional, but it's not a stupid movie. It's interesting. So we've had two movies based on two huge Mattel doll properties that were both willing and able to reckon with the pop culture legacy of the Thing.
Yeah.
In a way that, like, I'm not saying I'm expecting the Matchbox movie to be wonderful now, but I'm curious.
I think the box office problem for Masters of the Universe is obviously the week heading into Barbie, everyone knew it was great.
Yes.
And the word had gotten out, this is really, really good. But even in the weeks leading up to that, everyone knew it was a comedy. Everyone knew Gosling as Ken was going to be something special comedically. They were letting out snippets of the song. People knew what Barbie was going to be, even if they didn't know how great it was going to be. Masters of the Universe, I don't think the marketing of it gets any of that across. Like, people are kind of, to the extent they're aware of it, they're like, it's a He-Man movie. It's
Yes.
And there's not that hook of, if this is way funnier or more interesting than we think it's going to be, that's a problem because no one really thinks it's going to be interesting or funny.
Yeah,
and that's what's going to get people to go.
It's, and again, I would say it's less a comedy than an action fantasy with characters who are themselves funny.
Okay.
And that's probably overcompensating. It reminded me a lot of the 1980 Flash Gordon movie.
Okay.
In a good way.
Okay. One last thing on Masters of the Universe, and I don't know if this is something you're allowed to spoil. Is Jared Leto in this movie? Is he in it?
Because, as far as I know.
Okay, because CinemaCon obviously did not give any hints. His name has not been uttered on any TV commercial or poster I've seen for this movie. So having seen it, you think he's
Well,
in it.
Whoever did the motion capture, or was it, I don't know if it was all motion capture. There might have been some man in suit stuff. I don't know. It's all very convincing, whatever it is. Whoever did the physical work and did the voice is in the movie as much as you'd expect Skeletor to be in a He-Man movie.
Okay. Okay. Back to Backrooms. Got to ask this, the cast. You mentioned Chiwetel Ejiofor. He's great in this. Renata Rensby, amazing. I think she's going to get an Oscar nomination this year, but it'll probably be for that movie that she just won the Palme d'Or for.
Fjord.
Yes.
Fjord. So how much of a star-making performance is this for, I would say more for her because she's the newer person on the scene. And what credit do we give them as the actors in this for any of this 82 million opening?
Well, and again, I mean, simplistically speaking, I would argue they had very little butts and seats value in terms of either regular audiences or certainly fans of the property. I don't think there were that many people that showed up this weekend because they loved Dirty Pretty Things or The Worst Person in the World or what have you. That's not a criticism, whatever. That being said, to the extent that the positive reviews and the positive buzz moved the needle, they were very much a part of that. And at least, I don't want to oversell my own opinion, but one of the reasons I liked it as much as I did is because it's basically this one actor who I've always liked, I've liked for 20 some years, who is in almost every frame of the movie and putting everything on the table.
Yes.
In an excellent dramatic performance that works as a pitiful, in way, and define that how you wish, a sort of a pitiful midlife crisis melodrama before anything remotely supernatural occurs.
Again, I do think, because this movie is going to make God knows how much when it's all said and done, like 200 million plus easy, it has to. It's going to be enough of a, like Weapons was, where the day you came out of Weapons, I think we all said, oh, wouldn't it be nuts if Amy Madigan had any Oscar buzz? Even at that point, Oscar buzz.
Yeah.
And then you cut to a few months later, that movie is such a phenomenon that she ends up winning the Oscar. I do think he's going to be, because this is going to be such a cultural, one of the biggest stories of the year event, he's going to get some buzz for this movie. Again, I do think that is how big this movie will end up being by the end of this year.
I would be thrilled if that happened just on principle. That being said, there is this will all, of course, depend on what else A24 has to sell in the award season. I mean, I still think that Michael is going to end up among the 10 Best Picture nominees, not because I think it deserves it necessarily, but because it is a producer's triumph from a studio, Lionsgate, that I imagine won't have anything else to push for Oscar season.
Yeah.
So if they decide, let's spend money on the Oscars, this is it.
And that's a horror, and that's partly a horror film too. So I mean, I think that.
Oh yes, of course.
Yeah.
And I do think there are exceptions, obviously, but horror performances that break out tend to be ones that are fun. Right. And I think that benefits. Forgive me, I do not remember how to pronounce her last name. The lead in Obsession.
Yes.
Indie.
Yes. Is she a sneaky Oscar contender? Because everything I have heard is, and I mean, I've seen it, she's incredible at it. And I do think people actually recognize that.
And people are, she was saying that she was very influenced by Possession, the movie Possession. I think the thing too about her is that anytime I've seen her interviewed, any quote that she does, she's like a fan of what's come before. And I think that plays really well with the industry because they'll say, oh, here's a young person who respects the stuff that we made, right? And isn't saying like, oh, well, isn't sour graping, isn't saying stuff that is like, I hate everything that came before. This is finally a movie for us. It's like, no, I had a VHS of Scream 3 that I got on my birthday, and it was awesome. Like, this is somebody who's saying, I love film, and I think that will play really well when you have to glad hand and you have to go to the parties.
I agree. That's actually,
Indy Navarrete.
Thank you.
Star of Obsession. These two movies are star-making performances, and again, doesn't mean Indy Navarette's next movie opens at 30 million because she's in it Renata Rensby doesn't mean that Fjord opens to 30 million because she's in it. But they are so much more famous today than they were before these movies opened.
I think Chiwetel Ejiofor, who of course has been around since at least 2004 or 2002-ish, and has been, a utility player, supporting player in any number of movies, big and small, that made a lot of money. I certainly think he can go to say, hey, I get to raise my quote because look what I did.
Yes.
I was so good in this film that I think most adult movie critics kind of wrote off, at least critically, walking into it. I was so fucking good that, the reviews were like, this is a great movie, regardless of the brand.
Mm-hmm.
And it's the prestige.
Yes.
Or it's prestige. It's not so much necessarily box office value. It's, do you bring added artistic, prestigious, benefit of the doubt value to an already compelling commercial package?
Yeah. The kids were going anyway, but now the 40 and 50-year-olds who are going to keep going to these movies the next month, it's because, Renata, she allows me to go to this.
Yes.
These stars make this palatable for me to go see this horror movie based on a YouTube short.
And I think too the fact that it's quality actors that, though, for the mass market don't have a defined persona or a defined character, right? So imagine that they cast someone like Scarlett Johansson in this movie.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the kids will still go, but I think they would smell, this is sort of like a corporate, this is like a Hollywood bullshit thing. Like, I think the fact that Renat is known enough brings that. The lead actor as well is like, what is the defining performance to young people for them? They know he's been around. They can tell that he has he's great at his craft, and I think this was like.
But he's not Ryan Reynolds. If this was Ryan Reynolds and ScarJo in Backrooms, it's weird because they're both much bigger stars.
And weren't they married at some point or almost married?
Yeah, they've
so
been
that would have
married
been
and
awkward.
divorced a few times.
Awkward. Yeah. See, that would have been the first thing that he would have done. He would be like, "This is awkward," and looked at the camera.
Right.
And then you ruined Backrooms.
He would have said, "Oh, so I know I'm in a back room." That would have been what Ryan Reynolds.
So am I in a back room?
The Mississippi Grind is still in there somewhere.
That's true. Okay, you have faith. You have faith that he might come back at some point and do something.
Well,
good.
I mean, I think if he were to sign up to do a movie like this, he's enough of a professional to not sabotage the drama for the memes.
Not look at the camera. Okay, you think Ryan Reynolds could avoid looking directly in the camera if he was.
That being said, I do think this film benefits because again, I started giving it the benefit of the doubt, or at least curiosity, when I saw it was Chiwetel Ejiofor starring.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
because first of all, with all the talk about young kids and their young interests and blah blah blah, this is a movie about a middle-aged man's midlife crisis.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Played by a guy who, again, he's been in a lot. But he's never been sort of a cool, a kid-friendly franchise movie star.
Right.
I love that this opens the door for people like him to star in films like this. Like, this is great. This is going to do so much, hopefully, right, for people at a level under the Ryan Reynolds, for people under the level of a ScarJo.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah.
If they want to, because I mean, I imagine he didn't get paid all that much for this. So
that's true.
I hope there's bonuses involved.
Yeah.
I know it's Atomic Robot / Blumhouse is one of the producers on this. So, and I don't know if it was made under their, you get paid nothing, but if it does well, you're rich type thing.
Yeah.
With the Ethan Hawke contract.
Ethan Hawke contract.
I feel like
Same
Mark
thing with
Duplass
Obsession,
got a good deal from this. I think Mark Duplass comes out of this and he probably gets a new season of Creep ordered to Shudder because he was in this movie.
Wait.
This is a great Duplass
Mark
situation.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
That reminds me, like, I think there's another lesson to this, which is that the same thing with forgive me, Kane Pearson's he directed the film, he based it on his stuff, but he was not the sole credited screenwriter.
No,
he actually, either him or somebody in whether it's Atomic Robot, Blumhouse, or the other film companies that I don't know off the top of my head, mea culpa, they had the wherewithal to say, look, you need to get somebody that a veteran screenwriter to make sure that the fundamentals are solid.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And just in the same way that Markiplier, to his credit, said, okay, look, if I'm going to do this, I can't just do, it's the Markiplier movie. Come see it.
Right.
You know, he made a movie based on a, I assume, somewhat popular sci-fi horror video game.
Mm-hmm.
And he made a movie that at least somewhat resembles a movie.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't just, when you think, you know, up until maybe now, when most people think of a YouTube movie, they think of, you know, Mr. Beast cosplaying Jackass with his friends.
Mhm.
Yes, they think of
You know,
Smosh
these are
the
not
movie.
that.
Yeah, this is not Smosh the movie with Michael Ian Black playing the lead role. Yeah, this is not that. And, you know, we got to give credit to this trend a couple of years ago. The Rocka Rocka guys, Talk to Me. I feel like that's one of those movies that paved the way. I feel like that's a movie, if that was opening up, if that had never existed and that's opening up in 2 weeks, we're looking at Talk to Me, the same exact movie, opening to like $40 million. You know,
Quite
like
possibly.
there is just, the table has been set. Real quick, do want to touch on, because you talked about at the beginning, this Grogu, this Mandalorian and Grogu. You know, I get what you mean. It was a much lower budget than Solo and all that, but Star Wars, is this, and we lived through the, you know, post-Jedi until the re-release of the original trilogy and the prequels came out. There was that dead zone for Star Wars in the 80s, late 80s, early 90s. But I think today, where we sit after this second weekend drop of Mandalorian and Grogu, Star Wars has never felt more tarnished at least as a big screen property than it does today. Because even post Return of the Jedi until the prequels, it was more of a, oh, it's never happening again. But now it feels like an active rejection of Star Wars.
Yes.
That maybe it doesn't come back from.
Yeah. And again, I come from this from a sort of a grumpy old man point of view that, like, not every IP, brand, franchise, whatever, needs to or should be extended indefinitely.
Yes.
You know, let these things end.
Mm-hmm.
And some of that is, you know, when the audiences stop showing up for non-event, non-franchise, blah, blah, blah movies a decade ago, it did put studios in a strange position where they kind of had to, you know, dumpster dive through the IP box.
Mm-hmm.
You know, if it was easier for Lionsgate to make the next John Wick, they might not be, you know, they might be willing to say John Wick 4 was an all-timer. You know, it's awesome. It made a ton of money. We killed off the fucking lead character. We're done.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
No,
you need ballerina. You needed that.
But, you know, now there is this, and part of this is, you know, corporate mindset in terms of who runs the studios, yada, 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 that, like, these IP need to be treated like, you know, fast food, where they're always around.
Mm-hmm.
And to that, I always say, like, look, even McDonald's doesn't put out the McRib year round.
Mm-hmm.
And I think you are right in terms of where Star Wars is now, because, yeah, from, you know, Jedi to the re-releases, they were gone by choice.
Right.
The absence was, you know, again, was voluntary. He made 3 movies, he ended the trilogy, moved on. And in that ecosystem where other stuff could, you know, Beverly Hills Cop could make comparable money. Ghostbusters, Back to the Future, or Indiana Jones, Batman could make comparable money.
Mm-hmm.
And then you had stuff that, you know, this is just the 90s for now, because I mean the 80s for now, because by the 90s you've got Ghost, Dances with Wolves, Home Alone, Silence of the Lambs, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Terminator 2. But, you know, you could also have smaller movies that could make money, and that was okay. You know, Back to School doing like 90 domestic in the summer of 86. That was spectacular.
Yes.
But now, there's an expectation these things will never die. And if they do stop, it's a failure on your part. On your part, I mean the studio.
Right.
And even when the prequel trilogy ended in 2005, for that 10-year period, you still had the cartoons. And you still had Star Wars media, whether it was to a greater degree video games and what have you. And yes, there were video games in the 80s and 90s. I played them, some of them. Super Star Wars fucking rocks. But this may be the first time that you're right, that if Star Wars goes away, it will because the audience said, no, thank you.
Yes.
And I think, obviously, Starfighter is still being made. It will still be released, yada, yada, yada. And yeah, I guess it could be the next Godzilla Kong miracle, but there's a reason I refer to that as a miracle.
Mm-hmm.
If that doesn't do like phase 2 Marvel numbers, I think to do any more than that would risk turning this into the Terminator.
Yeah.
Wow.
And
Where it's like
Star
audiences
Wars
keep
is-
saying no, and you keep bringing it back.
Yeah.
And again, this is entirely Disney's fault. And I don't even mean in terms of like you bought Star Wars and made more Star Wars movies, whatever. You know, imagine if, okay, we've got Lucasfilm now. We're going to make Star Wars movies. Every 2 to 3 years, we're going to do this trilogy of Skywalker saga stuff. And then maybe every other year, or maybe every 2 years, ideally every 2 years, in a way that doesn't overlap, you get a standalone Star Wars movie that isn't just young Yoda and young Boba Fett and young Han Solo and young Obi-Wan Kenobi or whatever. Obviously, the franchise would still be in a healthier place. If they didn't, and I don't know if this was Lucasfilm or Disney, I'm inclined to blame Disney just because Bob Iger, but if they didn't react to The Last Jedi by listening to the internet, if the lesson from Solo was, oh, people really didn't want that, as opposed to blaming everything else under the sun for why Solo bombed, Star Wars would be in a healthier place.
Yeah.
And I do think it's entirely possible, just like X-Men Apocalypse being so bad that it did kill the franchise, even though it took one more movie. Fantastic Beasts and Crimes of Grindelwald killed the franchise, even though it took one more movie to confirm that, yes, it was in fact dead. It is possible that Rise of Skywalker, which did make $1 billion worldwide, will be seen as a film so loathed by the critical community and so indifferently received by general audiences in a universe where movies of the size of scale of Star Wars are comparatively par for the course, that it becomes, a franchise-killing disaster.
Yeah. And I think the story right now is the young people this weekend. And I think it is clear young people do not give a S about Star Wars. And I think more than anything else, did the sequel trilogy kill it for the fans? Or do the fans love Andor, the TV show Andor? None of that matters. All that matters is I think your average 15 to late 20-year-old doesn't care about any of the Star Wars stuff. They don't care. They maybe would have cared about Kylo Ren and what was her name?
Nobody.
They might have cared about them if those movies had been better, and that's what they focus on. Is let's make movies on these new characters. They didn't do that.
I think they could care about Rey.
And Rey,
she's still alive.
But you know what I mean?
Yeah.
If that had been the focus of those movies, was we're going to make Rey and Kylo Ren, which they kind of did in this. All these movies stink, but they didn't make things for young people to attach to, and instead now it is stuff that they think is lame.
Well, they're not leading anymore. I think that The Last Jedi scared them so badly that they have not made a bold, interesting move theatrically since then, and they will not. And that's what's going to kill it, because they just got scared that something interesting and different happened with their action figures.
Yeah. And so they went to make a movie about the little baby green puppet that looks like the old puppet from the other movie.
Yeah.
And if you're
the
an
bounty hunter that's
18-year-old,
Boba Fett, but not.
Yeah, if you're an 18-year-old, you're going to say, I don't care about this baby puppet from this show that I kind of half watched when it was on TV when I was stuck inside 5 years ago. No one cares about this fucking baby puppet.
And is nobody talking? That's the other thing,
than like 50-year-olds.
Can I mention this as well? Is that Mandalorian and Grogu, like baby Yoda, that's how I'm going to refer to this thing, because it's baby Yoda. When you think of that show, you think of COVID. Like, I think a lot of people think of COVID, and nobody's talking about it because we don't talk about COVID, and we don't talk about how fucked up we are from those years. Even now talking about it, I don't want to talk about it. That is an element that is not being talked about because we have not come to grips with it. But I do think there is something about young people that they see Grogu and they think That's when I couldn't see my friends. That's when all my teachers were on a screen. That is my deepest fear that I cannot face because my parents don't want to talk to me about it. The culture doesn't want to talk about it.
But my dad made me watch this with him when I wasn't allowed to leave the house. I think
that-
if
and
you're
that
a
is a-
teenager
yes.
now, that is a core memory. Is my dad forced me to watch this fucking Baby Yoda when I wasn't allowed to leave the house.
And then the
Why
first
would
thing,
I go see
the
him at
first
theater?
thing he took me to when we could go somewhere was a Ghostbusters movie. And that is going to be a core trauma for these kids.
Yeah.
That actually, and again, I could say, well, Godzilla v. Kong, blah, blah, blah. But yeah, I think in terms of an adaptation of a TV show, which this is, I think you're right that it is one of the definitive pieces of pop culture that is associated with COVID. And certainly, I imagine, the new Vision TV show is going to have similar problems. Because as much as people liked WandaVision, and it was good, more or less, that is, if anything, a definitive piece of COVID era pop culture.
Yeah.
And
They should make that a movie too. Just throw that in the theaters and see how that does.
Well,
DC.
Well, Queen's Gambit
here's the
movie
thing.
would be the
Here's
most
the thing.
COVID movie
yeah,
ever made.
Queen's Gambit,
Queen's
the
Gambit
would be-
movie.
Yeah.
Oh, God. To be fair,
That was like a symptom of COVID, is watching Queen's Gambit. It
Yeah.
feels
fair,
like, at
that was
this
actually
point.
pretty good.
It was good, but still, it felt like
yeah.
I have no taste. I feel weird, and also this chess show with Anya Taylor-Joy is on TV.
Yeah,
these
yeah.
are all
Yeah.
these are all things that how you know you have COVID.
Yeah, that's you got to start swabbing your nose if Queen's Gambit is on your screen. Yeah.
No, it's funny that you say that about the kids thing. Because, again, I mean, people have been fighting about this for almost a decade. But as someone that did not like The Force Awakens for a number of reasons, I do think it laid the groundwork for the new cast being embraced by the younger generation. At that film's best, it is basically, it's a repeat of Star Wars because your parents can't actually fix what was broken, and now it's up to you.
Mm-hmm.
And I think The Last Jedi very much leaned into that to a degree that I think it scared a bunch of the man children. Where like the entire film was like, Star Wars is for children now, and grown adults on Reddit said, fuck you, no, it's not.
Right.
And that leads to The Rise of Skywalker, which is, step aside, young people, grandpa's favorite hero is here to save the day.
Right.
Which scarred me so bad that's why I didn't like Top Gun the first time I saw it.
And now you're at a place where those old farts force the kids away from Star Wars because said, no, this is ours.
Mm-hmm.
And now 5 years later, those people don't go to movies anymore. They've decided we stay in forever. So no one is going to go see these Star Wars movies.
Mm-hmm.
And again, no one in the sense that this movie's made over 100 million domestic.
Yeah,
Last
they'll do
thing on-
350.
on, it's a year out because Starfighter comes out next summer, right? It's a
Yes,
summer
Memorial Day
2020.
weekend.
So
Poor Gosling.
I a month ago was like, whatever Grogu does, Starfighter is going to be totally fine. I'm in a different spot now. Gosling should be the most important thing of either of these movies. He's so hot coming off of Project Hail Mary. But you could easily see Starfighter, quote unquote, bombing relative to its expectations now, right? I mean,
Yes.
I don't know what exactly that looks like, but there's a world in which next year does Starfighter open
Well,
to 50 million, for the
I
weekend?
think what it looks like, and this might be optimistic, but what it looks like is a movie that costs about as much as Fantastic Four and makes about as much as Fantastic Four. Again, even that's better than Solo. But again, it's a matter of when the brand itself is no longer an automatic cinematic vacation destination, that really lops a chunk off your, expectations. And it is astonishing how singularly Bob Chapek or Bob Iger, I don't want to completely blame this on Chapek, but how they used Disney Plus in a relentless, idiotic, doomed pursuit of imaginary, intangible streaming victories, kneecapped their three most prestigious and most important brands.
Yep.
Pixar, Star Wars, Marvel.
Yep.
And I don't want to toot my own here because I'm sure other people were saying this too. But I wrote a piece in 2018 saying, don't do this.
Wow.
Not because I'm a genius, but because I remember Who Wants to Be a Millionaire.
No one remembers the lessons of Who Wants to Be a Millionaire.
Including Bob Iger, which I think was one of the first things he did when he took over.
He put Regis on 8 nights a week and strangled that franchise to death, and did the same thing. Whereas Who Wants to Be a Millionaire should have been a once-a-year movie theater experience, and we all know that.
Although I do still wear matching ties that match my collared shirt.
Yeah, it was such a great collection at Macy's. The Breadwinner came in number 5 this weekend, made $7.5 million. Nate Bargatze, his attempt at being our big new comedy movie star. I mean, this is on par with all of the stand-up comedians get a shot at being a movie star movies we've had since COVID. It's Bert Kreischer with The Machine. It's Maniscalco with the Things My Daddy Told Me, or whatever that movie was called.
Joe Coy with Easter Sunday.
They all open, what, 4 to 7 million, all of them?
But you're not taking into account, Pat,
Okay.
the Nate rate. He wanted families to be able to see this movie about how stupid fathers are and how dumb they are and how they learn no lessons and how they don't know the names of their kids. They don't know how to make a lunch. They don't know how to take them to dance recitals or
Scott,
such things.
you're a dad. I mean, you
don't know the name of your kids, right?
Yeah, you're our box office daddy, but you are actually a biological daddy to real kids.
Yes.
Do you know your kids' names? Because in The Breadwinner, he doesn't know his kids' names. He doesn't know what school they go to. He can't feed them. I think he gives them cardboard to eat. Do you know what your kids eat? Could you feed them if needed?
It would be a struggle.
Okay.
And it would involve riddles and puzzles and physical activity. But I think I might be able to feed my own children.
Wow. Okay, so The Breadwinner is a little accurate, but it is a bit of an exaggeration.
I mean, I'm sure you are among
opening.
many, many, many people that saw the trailers for this. It was like, is this a movie from like 1987?
Yeah.
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 And it was kind of sold as sort of a quasi-affirm pure flicks, not really faith-based, but kind of chasing that same audience, kind of movie. I have not seen it. I don't know if it's that.
Right.
And to be fair, they only spent 25 on it. I'm sure they will get that back over the long haul. And just a few months ago, we were jumping over the moon because Kevin James' Solo Mio, which was pretty good, by the way, opened with $7 million. So
but
I'm glad they're trying.
That's Angel, and this is Sony.
Yes.
And Nate Bargatze proclaims himself as the biggest selling comic in 2024 or somewhere. He was like, he sells out arenas. He's going to have his Nate Land. He's going to have a whole amusement park, theoretically. And this guy can't make more than $7.5 million at the box office, right? Now, the Nate rate, of course, he wants people to be able to, it's a sliding scale. Now, unless people were just plunking down a nickel and getting into this movie, that is a failure. The Nate rate is a failure. It didn't get more people to go. This guy, he doesn't have what it takes to be a star.
And is this, it's just this weird thing that comedy has become post-COVID where every year or two you get one stand-up comedian who is not suited to writing or acting in movies, who they build a movie around, and then it flops, and it's another signal towards, well, comedies are dead at the box office. Because if Nate Bargatze couldn't open a movie, then comedy must be dead. And I feel like this is such a disservice to comedy movies that every year we get one of these stand-up comedian podcasters who make a terrible movie that flops, because of course it was going to flop. They were never going to make a good movie.
Because people interact with him either in a live setting or clips on their phone. And that's how they want Nate Bargatze.
Right.
They don't want his take on parenthood. They don't want his lightly religious, clean movie. Nobody wants that.
I think that's a good point in terms of comedy overall. When we're talking about, what I like to call, just a comedy, where it's, it's not Deadpool, which is that, that kind of content. Forgive me for using the word content, is available everywhere for free at a moment's notice. And with the whole social media segmentation, you're able to see just the best parts.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, why watch a talk show when you can just go online and see the stuff that was funniest?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And that is an issue. And I don't know if that's a solvable problem, but I think comedy, more so than other genres, are, even more of an uphill battle.
Yeah.
Because of that.
Yeah.
It's like, yes, thrillers are struggling, blah, blah, blah. Non-franchise thrillers, yeah. It's like, but you still can't necessarily say, oh, I saw this 1 5-second chase scene for the movie, now I don't need to see the movie.
Well, it's a perfect example is Obsession. If you saw a clip from Obsession, you would be like, I need to see the rest of this. Like, what is the context of this crazy thing I just watched? Same thing with Backrooms. You'd be like, I saw this crazy thing and I need to see it in context. That's not the same as the funniest scene in Breadwinner, which will probably give someone a light chuckle.
Mm-hmm.
And then they'd be like, I that's all I need to see.
So next week, Scary Movie 6. Well, Scary Movie 2000.
Well, Pat, real quick, don't we want to, while we have Box Office Daddy here, don't we want to put this weekend in context?
Oh, yes.
Before we talk about...
Yes. Then let's just do this, Scott. Where is this weekend? And obviously, we don't have much hindsight. We're here on the Sunday of the weekend. But in the modern era, this sort of like 80s on, you've got your Batman 89 opening weekend setting a new record. And you've got Something About Mary getting to #1 in September after, 11 weeks in theaters. And you've got Titanic getting dethroned. You got Barbenheimer weekend. These big historic, we'll be looking back on them on our deathbed weekends. Where is this Backrooms Obsession weekend? Do you think it's even, are we being hyperbolic to even consider it in a sort of top 5 most important box office weekends of our lifetime discussion?
If Hollywood even remotely learns the right lessons, I don't think we're being hyperbolic. My only caveat would be that these are lessons that were out there for the learning for a while. And I think, if I had to boil it down to one big takeaway, it's that this weekend should be the definitive final nail in the coffin conclusion of debunking everything that the so-called disruptors have told us over the last decade about who consumes what media and what form.
Yes. It is that important. And it's Backrooms and Obsession happening alongside Star Wars failing is what really crystallizes it. I think we're going to look back in 10 years and we're going to say, yeah, we lived through that. We lived through the weekend of May 29th, 2026, and we'll never forget it.
And it's interesting that, all these tech idiots disrupted everything and now everything's going back to how it used to be because that's how it works. And it's funny that they used these young people used a platform created by these tech idiots to then save theaters is so gratifying to me. It's the best use of this technology to say, yes, we will use you for what we need, and then we will graduate to the greatest form of entertainment there is, which is cinema.
Yeah. Just 2 quick hits in the next few weeks. Scary Movie, the reboot, speaking of comedy. Is there any, I feel like a couple of months ago, I would have said this is a slam dunk, open to 50. The audience is there. There's nostalgia for it. Is there a little bit of maybe the teens are going to really not care about this? And I don't know if the old farts nostalgia alone is enough. Like, where are you feeling with this movie? It doesn't feel as hot as it did to me like a month ago.
I think at worst, it's a situation where, instead of opening to, 50, whatever, it only opens to, instead of opening to like 45, maybe it only opens to 35, which is still terrific.
Yeah.
Obviously, all of the teens that showed up to all these horror films, I've seen this trailer a few times in theaters, and that's a good thing. Mm-hmm. The trailers seem to be emphasizing the extent that this film riffs on movies that they've heard of and they grew up on.
Terrifier,
Yeah,
Get Out.
Terrifier, Sinners, yada yada yada.
Yeah, I
Annabelle.
gotta say, and we're gonna have this as an article in the next few days, a report on our Substack. Scary Movie needs to, in these last couple of days, get some quick filming in and get at least one scene parodying Obsession and Backrooms into the movie that opens Friday. And we know they could work fast. They could come up with the stuff and they could shoot it and get in there fast. Because when you watch this commercial now, seeing a Get Out parody feels like that happened 100 years ago when you're comparing it to Obsession and Backrooms being the most of the moment movies possible.
Yeah.
I agree.
It helps them on one hand.
I know they have previews already that sort of riff on both films.
Okay.
I don't know to what extent they are like standalone clips that you could put in the movie.
Okay.
I don't think only people are worried about narrative coherency in a scary movie picture.
Yeah.
But I do agree that would be to their credit if they had the time and resources to do that.
Just do it. Just get him smoking weed in a back room.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah.
So last movie I want to get your quick take a few weeks out. Steven Spielberg's Disclosure Day opens on June 19th, right?
No, 12th.
No, June 12th.
June 12th. The 19th is Toy Story. So June 12th.
We've got our ticks.
There is the sort of talk of, man, here's the new auteurs, and you got an old fogey like Spielberg's about to bomb. I don't know. Is Spielberg looked at? He's not reviled by young people like a Star Wars or Marvel is starting to become. I think people, to the extent they are aware of him, they still like Spielberg, even if you're younger. But
yes.
Where are you at on this movie? Is this a movie that, worst case scenario, we could see this tanking and finishing in the 20 millions, or is there enough buzz?
Shocked.
Okay.
The unofficial official tracking is anywhere from 35 to 60, depending on who you ask.
Okay.
Obviously, that's a lot of wiggle room. Reviews will drop, I think, the Tuesday before it opens, which is normal. And it only cost allegedly, I was told, it only cost like 110, 115, which if that's the case, I think they're fine.
Okay.
That being said, I think there's a case to be made that if Disclosure Day bombs, the blame will be not on the kids, but on the adults. Because I'm not saying it's a grown-up movie per se, but, again, you're dealing with a filmmaker who is known for polished, prestigious, but also pulpy, adult films that kids can enjoy and often do. And that may be a simplification, but again, I am not worried. I'm also not worried because Universal's got Minions and Monsters. Mario's about to hit $1 billion in a week or two. The Odyssey, a few others that I'm probably forgetting. They have Overseas on Michael. I don't know how much actual tangible money they get from that, but whatever. So, worst case scenario, Disclosure Day becomes for Universal what One Battle After Another was for Warner last year.
Right. Yeah, is there any best case scenario for Disclosure Day? Obviously, if this movie gets lights out reviews and, man, this is the best Spielberg's been in 15 years, and Emily Blunt's getting Oscar buzz, and, man, the third act of this has got the craziest stuff we've ever seen. Is there the movies have just so much momentum that Disclosure Day also goes crazy, also opens to 70 million?
I see. Sure. That doesn't mean I think it's going to happen. But first of all, theoretically, if it plays to older audiences, they'll show up when they darn well feel like it.
Right.
That'll be another one where, no IMAX, no problem. I think it has IMAX for the first week. Maybe second. No, I assume Toy Story. Anyway. But no, outside of the Jurassic and the fourth Indiana Jones movie, even most of these Spielberg hits that we consider these giant monumental successes, other than E.T., sorry, granted they came out in the 80s and 90s and 2000s, but there were films that did, between 250 and 350 worldwide, give or take. So as long as it's still budgeted at a level that would have made sense in the 1990s and 2000s.
Mm-hmm.
And I would argue, even in 2002, Spielberg spending 110 million on an original sci-fi film made sense.
Mm-hmm.
I think as long as it, I'd be pleasantly surprised if it flirts with 400 million.
Okay.
Anything beyond that is aspirational. Could it happen? Sure. It's Spielberg. We never know.
Yeah.
Ready Player One did do almost 600 million worldwide.
Mm-hmm.
Granted, that was 200 of that was from China, but whatever.
Yeah, and for that older audience, there's really nothing that comes out between Disclosure Day and kind of the Odyssey. It's Toy Story and it's Minions and it's this very last one, Supergirl, comes out in a month because we probably won't talk between now and that opening. Does that feel even more like than Masters of the Universe? Like this is kind of going to be the bomb of the summer? It's just big budget.
I'm certainly less bullish on it than I was a month ago.
Yeah.
I mean, a month ago, it was like, okay, they're selling this as, it's a superhero plus. It's a superhero movie plus, a John Wickian revenge story with an HD heroine in outer space. So again, this is what Disney and Marvel did correctly in the 2010s is they would sell yes and. It's a superhero movie and it's a spy thriller. It's a superhero movie and it's an underwater Lord of the Rings. While a lot of the pretenders, Solo, King Arthur, and Robin Hood, et cetera, did well. It's just a superhero movie because they wanted people to think it was a superhero movie, but they sold it as the most generic possible superhero movie. So it's like, why the fuck am I going to see this diet icy cola or RC cola nonsense when I can see, cherry Coke or Coke, but with cherries? If that makes sense.
It does.
And then they're trying to entice us with Lobo, and it's like, does anybody really care about Lobo at this point? I mean, maybe, but is that enough of a plus?
I think so far they're being pretty restrained in terms of the marketing with him.
Yeah.
Because he was only on set for 2 weeks, which is good to hear. He didn't take over the movie.
Mm-hmm.
And they were always going to, if David Cornson's in the movie, of course he's going to be in the trailers. Why not?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
People would be reminded that they liked the last Superman movie. And they were happy when Supergirl showed up.
Mm-hmm.
That make them more inclined to see this solo Supergirl adventure.
But she showed up drunk, and here's my pitch would have been, she should have been drunk the whole time.
In the Supergirl.
What I gather, she's pretty not happy for at least the first act.
Well, I think that's a problem is
she should be happy drunk.
This movie feels it's being advertised as like kind of a bummer. And for a summer superhero movie, this character does not feel like they have any fun at all, at least in the advertising we're seeing.
But she's listening to Blondie.
Well, she's not even listening to it. It's on the soundtrack of the movie, but it's not like she's at a Blondie revival concert or anything. This movie just really feels like a messy, just like space bummer, and I don't think that's going to work. But this is starting to feel like versus expectations. This is going to be the biggest dud of the summer.
She should have been on ketamine then, I guess. That's
yes.
what we're hearing. She should have been on ketamine.
Put her in the dog in a K-hole. It's also a disaster that she admitted the dog is fake. Doge the Wonder Dog.
Buzz, word of mouth prior to release will obviously be essential.
Mm-hmm.
And if it screens for press and they say it's actually a lot of fun, there's stuff that's not in the previews, yada, 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 that will certainly help. As far as it, I will say for what it's worth, Craig Gillespie, I, Tanya is not it's a downbeat-ish story, but it's a lively, poppy, enjoyable movie. And Cruella is obviously fun and pulpy and what have you.
Loved Cruella.
So I don't think he's leaving Las Vegas with superheroes.
Yeah. It would help though if that is what the audience felt. They're going to buy their tickets based on what they're seeing, and what they're seeing is like that. She meets a girl who's crying about her parents, and she's crying, and everyone's crying, and Crypto the Super Doge is fake, and I don't know. So, Scott,
to be fair, you can argue that a young woman being devastated by the circumstances of her ecosystem is pretty relevant to young people today.
It is. But it's a tough sell as here comes to your fun superhero movie.
Yeah.
I think that's the biggest problem with this Supergirl is it just looks so bleak and just like grimy shitty space movie. I mean, that scene we saw at CinemaCon, which we were both at,
Yeah,
Clayton wasn't there.
which I was not thrilled with.
It was just a long, just trudge.
Yeah, it was. That's unfortunate. That being said, that would really stink because this is literally, other than Captain Marvel, this is the first time, other than Captain Marvel, that a female superhero movie has arrived on the coattails of a male skewing success with a budget, even if it's less, it's comparable. That it's not like Daredevil makes money, but no one really likes it. Now you have Elektra that costs, a third as much. It looks like garbage. It's not, here comes Supergirl 3, not after Superman 2, but after Superman 3. Even like Birds of Prey, after Suicide Squad. And then, Wonder Woman after Batman v Superman. And obviously Wonder Woman pulled it off anyway. But generally speaking, female skewing superhero properties of this nature usually have to follow a male skewing disaster. Even like the Marvels after Secret Invasion and Ant-Man 3.
Oh, Ant-Man 3 is the one. We always beat that drum on here. Don't point your finger at the Marvels. It's not the Marvels. It was Quantumania. Quantumania destroyed the MCU.
Yeah.
That was the one.
Yeah, and that was it's Secret Invasion didn't help, especially because ironically, the Marvels were supposed to come out like that summer, which A, it might have beaten the strike. B, it would not have been after the Secret Invasion, which A, nobody liked. B, created a false impression that you had to watch Secret Invasion, which everybody said was terrible, before you could see the Marvels. Now that wasn't true, but the narrative, especially because there was no one doing publicity with it, that was the only narrative in the media.
Right.
But anyway, old discourse.
Yeah.
The other thing I will say, and I will shut up. Yes, comedies have had a rough go of it, and they will continue, but the drama actually did very well. That did like 50 domestic and 100 worldwide on what, 25 budget, 30 budget?
Yeah.
As did Materialist, which also did 100 million worldwide.
Yeah. I guess it's that comedy has taken a new form and is not going to be what it was in what we think of the 80s, 90s, and 2000s, where there are just comedy stars doing sketch comedy type movies. Comedy is Zendaya in a very, what the drama was. And that's what a comedy is these days.
There's a reason why there's still, and maybe it's not at its height, but The Office was watched by young people. These sort of cringe comedy sitcoms are what the young people were watching over and over again. And that is what the drama is. It is a cringe comedy.
Right. So Scott, thank you for helping put this historic weekend in context. What do you have coming up over at The Outside Scoop, on your show? I know you're...
I don't plan that far, man. Obviously, my Masters of the Universe review. I have seen The Furious. It's excellent. It lives up to the hype and then some. That comes out of the 12th, so obviously I'll have my review before then. I am seeing Scary Movie 6 on Wednesday. I'll probably review it. The only one of those I liked was part 3. So I'm not expecting to love it. I'm taking my kids to Digital Circus on Thursday. We'll see. If time allows, I'd like to write about a couple things related to this weekend. The big navel-gazing thing is that I do think, and I was saying this before this weekend, going back to mid to late 2025, where you had the housemaid outgrossing Gone Girl and Indiana Jones 5. You had Marty Supreme nearing 100 million, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. This feels like the sea change that we saw in 2001 when the next generation of moviegoers became old enough to have spending power and an opinion about what they wanted to see and when. And that coincided with the nationwide and/or global expansion of the multiplex, which meant that movies could play wider concurrently more than ever before. And that's the summer that you saw, The Money Returns almost beating the opening weekend record. Rush Hour 2 and Planet of the Apes almost beating the opening weekend record. Hannibal opening with $59 million. Shrek earning far more than any non-Disney tune had ever done before. And, obviously that year was capped off by Harry Potter and Lord of the Rings. I do think on a curve, that kind of transition is happening.
Wow.
And I think that could be what mitigates the last decade's worth of nobody goes to the movies just to go to the movies anymore. The only thing that I think can stop it, aside from, God knows what can happen in the real world right now, is if Skydance buys Warner Brothers and either intentionally or unintentionally fumbles the ball so badly that you have two legacy studios that are no longer playing on a playing field comparable to like 2018.
Oh,
Then, by the midpoint of the decade, you'll have Fox, Paramount, and Warner Brothers that are, a fourth of what they used to be.
Yeah.
Yeah. That is the one thing that could F this up. But thank God for a studio like A24 getting on the scene. And obviously they are not Warner Brothers of, last year. But you need A24 to do what they set out to do 2 years ago, which is be a major studio, to be able to make blockbusters. And when you see Backrooms and you see the drama, all right, maybe that could make up for whatever Paramount Warner Brothers is going to turn into. And maybe Amazon MGM being a real studio helps. Because listen, this is the best it's been since 2019 at the theater. Mm-hmm. So we just hope that this continues.
In some ways, it's better.
In some ways,
we're seeing more variety, I will argue.
Yeah,
for sure.
The weird stat, it's not a weird stat, it is what it is, but this weekend was like 2% above Memorial Day weekend, Friday to Sunday, which is really unusual. That's happened once in 2023, ironically, when Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse opened to 121 million. It also happened in 2017 when Wonder Woman opened with 103 million, and then Captain Underpants also opened with 25 million. That was like 30% above the 2017 Memorial Day weekend, which had Pirates of the Caribbean 5 opening with $79 million, which, give or take, inflation is basically what Mandalorian is doing right now.
Mm-hmm.
So it just goes to what you, me, and everybody with half a brain has been saying since at least May 2021, when A Quiet Place 2 over Memorial Day weekend proved that Godzilla v. Kong was no fluke, that the theatrical ecosystem can be exactly as healthy as the volume and variety of movies that are offered on a wide theatrical scale by the distributors.
Yes.
More movies, more money. It's almost as simple as that.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Well, thank you, Scott. You preached today. This was, we got the sermon from the Mount that we needed on this weekend. So of course, subscribe to and pay for the Outside Scoop, Scott Mendelson Substack. You owe this man a living. He is the legend. Email us, theboboyspodcast@gmail.com. We were going to lance this Engorge mailbag, but then this weekend happened, and so we have to push off answering emails to the next episode. We may
never do it. We may never do it.
We will get to it. Listen, we have an email. Scott,
yes.
One of our listeners who lives in the UK stumbled upon the set of the Beatles movies and has a live boots on the ground report from the set of the Beatles movies that wrote us a great email. We will get to that on the next episode.
I'll allow that one.
And along with many other emails. So we'll get to that. theboboyspodcast@gmail.com. Follow us on social media at theboboyspod. Of course, follow Scott Mendelson on Twitter X and other platforms. All of them. He's there. He's
I'm
TikToking.
Not on them all that much, but I'm on all of them.
He's on all of them.
He's still doing the Ice Bucket Challenge on every single platform, keeping that alive.
Yes.
That's the one IP that shouldn't die.
Subscribe to our Substack. Like I said, we got that brand new article that just went up debunking the alleged directors of Backrooms. So we got that article on our Substack. 5 stars on Apple Podcasts. We are YouTubers. Hey guys. So subscribe to the YouTube channel, and that is it. Scott, thank you. Clayton, that is all I have.
Pat, you've said it all.
Great.
There's nothing left to be said.
All right, I could leave.
Except for, until next time,
we'll smell you at the box office. Nailed it. Hey guys.